The old house stood on a hill overlooking the town, a dark silhouette against the twilight sky. My grandparents had left it to me, a sprawling relic of a bygone era, filled with dusty furniture and forgotten memories. I moved in during the summer, seeking solitude after a noisy chapter of my life in the city. The silence was the first thing I noticed. It was a deep, profound quiet that the city never allowed. But that silence didn't last. It started on the third night. I was jolted awake by a faint sound, a melody drifting from downstairs. I checked my phone 3:13 a.m. The music was old, a crackling jazz tune from the 1940s. I crept out of bed and tiptoed down the creaking staircase. The sound was coming from the living room. There, on a dusty mahogany table, sat an old cathedral-style radio, its wooden frame gleaming in the moonlight. It was unplugged. The cord was coiled neatly beside it, covered in a thin layer of dust. Yet music poured from its speaker, filling the room with a ghostly serenade. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached out a trembling hand and touched the radio. It was cold, inert. The music didn't stop. It wasn't loud, just a gentle, persistent whisper of a bygone era. I fumbled for the dial, but it was frozen in place. There was no on-off switch I could find. Panicked, I backed away, fled up the stairs, and locked my bedroom door. The music continued until just before dawn, then faded into silence as the first rays of sun touched the windowpane. The next night, I was determined to prove it was just a strange dream, a trick of a tired mind. I made sure the radio was still unplugged. I even moved it into the closet under the stairs and shut the door firmly. I went to bed, listening intently to the silence of the house. Nothing. I felt a wave of relief wash over me and started to drift off. And then it came, 3:13 a.m. on the dot. The same tinny jazz music, muffled but unmistakable, seeping from under the stairs. This became my new reality. Every night, at 3:13 a.m., the radio would play. It didn't matter where I put it. One night I locked it in the trunk of my car parked down the street. I woke up to the faint strains of a trumpet solo seemingly coming from my own driveway. I'd rush to the window and see nothing but the empty moonlit street. The sound was everywhere and nowhere, a phantom broadcast just for me. I stopped trying to sleep. Instead, I'd sit in the living room waiting. At 3:13 a.m., the music would start, and I would just listen. The songs were always different, but from the same era. Big band swing, soulful blues, romantic ballads. It felt less frightening and more melancholy. It was like listening to a ghost's private record collection. Who was this broadcast for? I started researching the house. I spent days in the town's local library, sifting through old newspapers and property records. The house was built in 1928 by a man named Arthur Peneligon. He was a radio enthusiast, a pioneer in the early days of amateur broadcasting. The articles described him as a recluse, a man who lived for the airwaves. Then I found the final article about him. It was an obituary. Arthur Peneligon had passed away in his home in the winter of 1948. The cause of death was listed as natural causes. The time of death, according to the town doctor who found him, was estimated to be around 3:15 in the morning. He had been found in his favorite armchair in the living room. Beside him, his beloved radio was still warm. The article mentioned his one great love, a singer named Eleanor Vance, who had moved to Europe before the war. He never saw her again. He spent his nights broadcasting music into the ether, hoping she might somehow be listening wherever she was. That night, I felt a strange sense of calm as I waited for the music. At 3:13 a.m., a slow, beautiful ballad began to play. The singer's voice was clear and heartbreaking. I looked up the song later. It was called My Star in the Night, a little-known recording by Eleanor Vance. I imagined Arthur sitting in this very room, night after night, broadcasting his love and his loneliness into the static-filled darkness, a message in a bottle sent across an ocean of airwaves. The next morning, I took the old radio from the closet. I dusted it carefully, polished its wooden case, and placed it back on the mahogany table in the living room. I found the old cord, wiped it clean, and plugged it into the wall socket. For the first time, it felt like the right thing to do. That night, I went to bed and fell into the deepest, most peaceful sleep I'd had in weeks. I woke up once, naturally. I glanced at my phone. It was 4:30 a.m., The house was completely silent. The radio had played its final song. Or maybe, just maybe, its message had finally been delivered. Arthur's broadcast was over. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, but to be understood. The house is still quiet, but it's no longer an empty silence. It's a peaceful one, filled with the faint, lingering echo of a love story that transcended time, carried on the airwaves in the dead of night. Sometimes when the house is still, I think I can almost hear it. Thanks so much for watching. If you have your own story about a place with a memory, share it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales from the quiet corners of the world. See you next time.